Hey everyone, welcome to the show. We've got Paul Brislen here. Paul is the Chief Executive of the Telecommunications Forum. Do you want to give us a bit of a rundown what that means? What exactly is the Telecommunications Forum, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. We're the industry body for the telecommunications sector, but we're a bit different to the normal crowd of industry bodies. We don't just represent the sector. We also work to develop the codes that govern the sector, if you like. So when you move between providers, take your phone from one provider to another, number portability kicks in. We make sure that all works. We do things like marketing codes to make sure they're talking the same language. Emergency calling, vulnerable customers. We've got dozens of codes that govern the way the sector works and make sure that they're competing fairly for your money, but that they're also working together where they need to.
I'm guessing then something like Cyclone Gabriel is a really good example of telcos working together
Yes, yeah,
and doing what they can for the greater good, as it were.
yeah. We run the the Telecommunications Emergency Forum, the TEF. We're the sector coordinating entity for telco for major crises. So we bring everyone together. It's a very fancy term for what's basically just a Teams chat, but we bring everyone together. We make sure that they've got the support they need. If we need to escalate things to government to get support about heavy lift equipment to move stuff around, that kind of thing, that we're there. And we report back to the minister and the ministries that are interested to make sure that they know what's going on, so that we can get any systems, any networks back up and running as quickly as possible.
Does that give you guys a seat at the table in the bunker if there's an emergency?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Although we're not based in Wellington, so we've got a metaphorical seat in the bunker. I've been in there. It's not exactly your modern work environment, I have to say. I think they updated it last in about 1984. So a lot of shared working spaces and pink desks and a lot of people rushing around the place. We are something's always breaking in telecommunications, so we're quite good at coming together to fix things. Where we engage with government, it's largely about letting them know what we're doing rather than seeking directional guidance. So our role in the bunker is largely to coordinate with the other network providers, so electricity in particular. We need to know if you're going to turn the lights back on in this area in an hour, we won't put generators and fuel supplies in there. We'll concentrate over here. So we coordinate quite well with electricity, roading, and fuel to make sure that we can switch lights back on as quickly as possible.
Wait, jump on in.
How much of the new, because we recently spoke to Jason Harris from One NZ, so how much of that new satellite texting service helping you guys as an organisation to go back to Minister Collins and bring up that technology and for cyclones and all that kind of jazz?
Yeah. I think low Earth orbit satellite, which is what Starlink operates, that's essential. That is a fantastic addition to our network mix, if you like. In the old days, we used to just have one network. We had copper lines to your house. That was it. There were no mobile phones, no satellites, no fiber, nothing else. These days, we've got 4 different technologies in use in New Zealand. We have the fiber network, which is gold standard, state of the art, carries a huge amount of data back and forth up and down the country and overseas all day, every day, and is second to none. We've got mobile. We've got 3 mobile operators, all with their own network infrastructure and their own abilities. We've got fixed wireless. We've got a number of different providers up and down the country, the WISPs, the wireless ISPs, who are really quite hyper-local. Some of these operators are serving maybe just 100 or 200 customers, but they've got equipment up there to make sure that you've got connectivity. And now the fourth leg of that group is satellite, and that provides an extra type of resilience. So you should be able to still make a connection even when the terrestrial networks are damaged or offline. It's good to have a mix because they all have different strengths and weaknesses. So fiber is great for data, but it's not very portable. Mobile's great for voice and text, but it relies on electricity to the towers. So when that's out, you've got trouble. We're sort of we're covering each other's weak spots, if you like, so that the whole of it is, in an event, you should be able to find some form of communication that will get you a connection out to the outside world.
So how does it then incorporate with the growth of artificial intelligence? Because we've seen a lot of artificial intelligence incorporated into some of the new operating systems as well. And we'll get onto the shutdown of 3G in a moment. But how does the new technology incorporate with artificial intelligence?
Yeah, well, artificial intelligence, or as I like to think of it, artificial stupidity. It's spell checker on steroids, and we all know how great the autocorrect is on your phone. I am not a fan of the artificial intelligence spend. I think we're spending a huge amount of money and a huge amount of resource building a technology that will do a half-assed, mediocre job of it when it comes to just about anything you can name. So I'm very skeptical of the bubble that is artificial intelligence. But for us, we're quite agnostic. The networks themselves carry data. That's what we're there for. We are the plumbing at the bottom of the cliff, if you like. We provide the connection. It's up to customers and to users to figure out what they want to do with it and what they're going to use, what they're going to fill those pipes with, whether it's AI generated, Chat GPT prompts, or whether it is photography and art, whether it's video, music, you name it. It could be boring stuff like spreadsheets as well. But we're agnostic. We don't mind. You guys sort it out. If you see something useful, that's fantastic. We'll provide the connection, and off you go, and you guys do it.
What I have said to people when they have shown concerns about AI is that, I for most part agree with you, but I feel that there are also some benefits for our disabled community like myself and possibly our elderly community who they call digitally isolated. So I believe that there are yes, there's a lot of bad press around AI, but I believe that there's also some potential for some great advancements in disability technology, especially, or elderly technologies.
Oh, look, I agree. I think the potential is huge, and it's the same trajectory we've been on all along. The digital world has meant you don't need to be able to go to the post office in order to send a parcel. You can do it all remotely and digitally. My concern is that a lot of the things that they're touting as a huge success for AI, really, it's not very good at. So there was the legal case not so long ago with a couple of lawyers in the US who had used ChatGPT, I think, to build their case portfolio. They presented it in court as if it was all true, and of course, all of the citations were just made up because it looks like a presentation that you would give in court. However, it was all fake, and the judge quite rightly called them out on it and tore strips off them for denigrating the legal profession. That's a whole other battleground, right? But I do think there is huge potential for those digital assistants being able to support people who do need have different challenges around communication and connectivity.
Yeah, so then with the 3G shutdown, which you've asked to come on and talk about, how does that all wrap into everything else?
Yeah, so 3G is an older technology. I'm showing my age. I was involved in the launch of it many years ago and explaining to people that no, it's not going to kill bees and give you brain cancer. It's okay. It's just a radio. But it is now quite elderly and it's quite out of date. 3G was introduced when the iPhone first launched in New Zealand. So we're talking about 2008, 2009. We've since launched a 4G network, and today we're rolling out 5G networks. So each generation has become more efficient, better at doing the things we need it to do, provide faster connections for customers in more places, and 3G is no longer being developed by the equipment makers. So all around the world, 3G networks are being switched off. We can reuse the spectrum, the radio spectrum, for other things, faster connections using the same spectrum, and away we go. So by the end of this year, all three of the mobile network operators in New Zealand will have switched off their 3G networks. They're replacing them. You won't lose connectivity. They're replacing them largely with 4G coverage. So that means that don't think of it as a shut-off. Think of it as an upgrade. So instead of getting relatively slow connection speeds by modern standards, you should be state of the art, getting up there with the faster connection speeds, able to do more in more places. But there are a few watcher moments. You've got to be quite cautious about this. First thing is you've got to make sure your device will work without a 3G network. And what we've discovered, thanks to the Australian example, because they did it last year, what we've discovered is there are a whole bunch of phones that use 3G, and it's obvious they're 3G only. They won't work at all. There are a whole bunch of phones that use 4G or 5G. They should be fine. But in between, there are a whole bunch of phones that are reliant on 3G for calling. So it might say I'm a 4G phone, but it uses 3G for voice. That was quite common when the 4G networks first launched. And there's a whole raft of those phones still in use in New Zealand. And customers may think, well, look, it says 4G, so I'm good. We're going to launch in the next couple of weeks a number you can text, and it will tell you, it'll look at your phone's serial number, and it will tell you whether or not your phone works, won't work, or bring it into a store, and we might be able to upgrade and see what's what. And for those people, it might be as simple as changing a few settings inside the software. It could be that you need new software, or it could be that actually the phone just won't work, and you won't be able to make voice calls. And then you've got to decide what you want to do from there.
And for some people, I'm sure not being able to take a voice call sounds like heaven.
Yes. But of course, if you need to make an emergency call, that's when you go, yes, I actually do need to do that. In Australia, they discovered they handle emergency calls in quite a different way to New Zealand's networks. But so I'm just checking whether or not this is an issue for New Zealand. So far, the good news is it isn't. But in Australia, what they discovered were a set of handsets that would make normal voice calls, but would not make emergency calls because of the way an emergency call is initiated in the network. And that's a horror story, right? That is the worst of all possible worlds. You think your phone's fine, you need to make an emergency call, and you can't. So we're working with the handset makers to see whether that is an issue that we need to address, and if so, we'll jump on board and get that sorted. But in Australia, it led to all kinds of panic at the end of the project. So we're keen to avoid the panic.
You talk about Australia. So how do we avoid what happened with something like Optus or something, so that we don't have this issue with one of our big telcos? Because I watch a lot of Australian news, and I don't want, for my older members of my family, I don't want a repeat of Optus.
No, neither do we. And the good news is they've already made the mistakes, so we can learn from them. So we had quite a good session with the Australian Mobile Telephony Association, which is an organisation similar to ours over in Australia. We asked them to give us a presentation on their project, what they did, what worked, what didn't work, and what learnings, what things they learned from that, and what we should be doing here in New Zealand. One of the key issues that the Australians didn't address early on is they didn't work together as an industry to try and combine their forces, if you like. So they wasted a lot of time and a lot of resource doing the same thing as each other was doing. So there are 3 mobile network operators over there. We're a bit smarter than that, I would hope. So we will be working together to make sure that the list of devices that work is accurate across all 3 network providers, that customers are informed using the same kind of language and the same kind of words. Nobody's going to use it as a way of trying to steal customers off each other. I think there was a bit of that going on in Australia. But yeah, generally speaking, because we saw what a kerfuffle it was over there, there's a huge amount of willingness to work together to make sure it doesn't happen here. My board consists of the CEOs of the major telcos, and they've said, this is our biggest priority for the year. This has to go smoothly. Nobody gets left behind. Nobody should know. By the end of the year, I don't want anybody to say, I didn't know this was happening. hence coming to talk to yourselves, and I'll talk to anybody about what the plan is for the year ahead. And hopefully by the end of the year, you'll have me back on the podcast, and you'll be able to say, well, that was like a Y2K. That was a damp squib. Nothing happened, and we'll say, yes, that's right. We completed.
How you know it worked, because nothing happened. Yeah.
The upshot is life carries on, and that's exactly what we want. Yeah.
So I think you recall, being far more advanced in my years than I look some days, there was a whole bunch of technology upgrades that happened to infrastructure, like people's power boxes. They have automatic readings, and when that first rolled out, I believe those were 3G as well. It was because it was a relatively simple network to be able to send relatively simple data to record these things. How much of that kind of infrastructure is still in place, and how much would that be impacted by these changes?
Yeah, well, that is a very good question. So there are 3 technical work streams we've got underway at the moment. We've got one looking at handsets, one looking at emergency calling. Sorry, 4 if I include emergency calling as a separate stream. One looking at the network coverage, because that's something we should talk about as well. But the 4th stream is exactly these devices, these Internet of Things devices that were very just coming to the fore when 3G launched. 3G really enabled IoT to kick off. And there are lots of them around the place. The good news is we have been engaged with the producers of these products for many years, warning them that this date was coming and they need to migrate. The bad news is a lot of them, as we all do, have waited until the last minute to do something about it. So I met with an organization the other day that run large facilities. So this is the Facilities Management Association. And they're the landlords and the building owners and managers for those big corporate downtown offices. And what we discovered was the lifts in the what used to be the Vodafone building is now the One New Zealand building in their head office. The lifts in the building, those emergency phones, all use 3G, and they will all need to be upgraded. Unfortunately, the owner of the building and the lift company have had some kind of stoush, some kind of falling out. Now they're busy suing each other about who's going to pay for the change, the upgrade. That's something we want to avoid, right? We have plenty of products out there that we just don't know are using 3G in this way, whether they are movement sensors and burglar alarms, whether they are smart meters, electricity meters in particular, soil moisture measurement devices in agri-tech, those little personal alarms that, for medical alerts. Now, most of the really risky ones have already moved to other technologies, whether it's Wi-Fi or 4G, or in some cases fiber and then Wi-Fi in the home. But there are some alarming ones out there that I was unaware of, and I found out recently there is a brand of pacemaker, which at night when you're asleep talks to a little box at the side of the bed. And the little box then reports back to the medics and the doctors to give them an update of your report for the day. And that was using 3G. So, you read
the pacemaker have 3G, or is it the receiver box?
The receiver, the little box. Thankfully, it's the little box by the side of the bed. But because we're not transplanting pacemakers. That sounds like a lot of work. But it's that kind of thing, right? You just don't know. So I've said to them, you need to do an audit of all the devices you've got that communicate with the outside world, find out how they're doing that and what risk you've got, and then act accordingly. And you've got the rest of this year to sort that out. For some, it'll be a software update. For some, it's just in the settings. You just go on in and change the settings from 3G to something else. But for others, they're embedded devices, and then you've got to have an awkward conversation with your supplier about what they're going to do to sort you out. I've also talked to the Commerce Commission about maybe doing something to alert sellers of devices to make sure they are selling things that are still legally appropriate. The Fair Trading Act and the Consumer Guarantees Act both talk about devices or products that you sell must be fit for purpose for a reasonable period of time. And I think if you're selling a 3G device, a 3G reliant device today, you're probably not in compliance with the law. So hopefully, nobody's selling anything that is 3G reliant, because by the end of the year it won't work.
Is there a cut-off date?
We're aiming for the end of the year. There'll be a decision made probably towards the end of September about whether they do stop October, November, somewhere in there, or whether they in fact keep it rolling through the summer. Because New Zealand is quite different to a lot of countries. Summer is our big time to be away from home, and that's when a lot of phone use kicks off, because people who don't normally have a mobile phone are traveling, so they get the phone out of the cupboard and off they go. We want to make sure those people are supported, so we'll make a go no go decision fairly late on in the piece, and we'll see how it's tracking in terms of switch over and in terms of public awareness, and then we'll make a decision. But yeah, the plan is work towards the idea that by the end of the year it's all switched off, and you'll need something else. That way you're covered.
As much as planning comes into this, sorry, I'll make this my last question, Blake, I promise. As much as planning comes into this, humans are really stupid at times. And there's often stuff that happens afterwards, like unexpected consequences afterwards, or people who are refusing to change, things like that. What is the game plan for dealing with the unexpected ongoing use of 3G after that cutoff point?
Yeah, well, this isn't the first time we've switched off a network, so we've got some experience with exactly that, because you're quite right. People don't act rationally as the market would dictate. 2 Degrees switched off 2G some years ago, and I was involved in that project. It was quite fascinating to watch from a sociology point of view. But previously, prior to that, Telecom, as it was back then, switched off the old 025 network. And that required a huge amount of upskilling and training, because a lot of the people using 025 were not technical leaders. They were not interested in the technology. They were much more interested in just making phone calls. So for them, it was a very challenging situation to try and convince all these people that they needed new devices. What we found, certainly at 2 Degrees during the 2G shutoff, is there is no rational, steady decline in usage until you've got very few people left on the day. What you've got is a whole bunch of people waiting and waiting and waiting. Oh, they'll have to give me a free phone. I'll wait for the free iPhone. Here it comes, here it comes. Oh, they haven't given me one. And on the day of switch off, I don't know the numbers, but there were still several thousand people using 2G at 2 Degrees the day of switch off. And the next day they went out and bought a new phone. So they literally will wait until the last minute before making the shift. There's nothing you can do about that. You just have to accept that that is going to be the case. And the one thing I've advised the ministry, for instance, Ministry of Business and Innovation and Employment that looks after us, is don't expect to see that steady decline in numbers. Don't use that as a metric, because it just doesn't happen that way. What you've got to track is awareness. And as long as awareness is high, then you're in a good place. There will be some people for whom this is just not a priority. And they will wait and wait and wait, and then, it's my phone stopped working. Right, I'll go and get a new one.
As we move on to our final section, which is network, for people that are watching or listening to this, thinking, how much of a lifespan has 4 or 5G got? So how much of a lifespan are we hoping to get out of the rest of the network before we have to repeat this process?
Well, hopefully, quite a bit. The big turning point in network design was the move from 3G to 4G. So 4G is a data network. It is all the bits carried are data, including voice. Voice is just another packet on the network. So it's a digital network. 3G was the last of the old technologies. So voice was carried as an old-fashioned voice circuit, if you like. So that used a lot of bandwidth just for voice, and that's one of the reasons why it's kind of out of shelf life. It's done its dash. I don't think we have the same problem with 4G. You can leave that switched on for quite some time to come. 5G is offering speeds now that are so fast. Any sixth generation network that comes along isn't going to be quite as compelling for a consumer like us. You just can't get faster than fast, right? You sort of press the button and the video starts playing. well, it starts playing a little bit quicker with the new one. Well, I don't care. It's just, it's already doing what I need it to do. So we saw this with chips and computers over many years. Intel would always have a big flashy launch and tell you about the new chip, and it was smaller and faster and used less power, and it was very exciting up to the point where it just wasn't a problem anymore. The new chip was 24% faster than the old one, but you just couldn't see it because it was so fast. And I think we're almost there with mobile tech. The new advances will be different things like using satellite, handset to satellite capability and things like that, rather than just getting faster and faster. So it's a long-winded way of saying I don't think they will have a point where they have to switch off 4G in quite the same way. I think we'll use that for large-scale deployment for many years to come.
And is there anything else about technology you would like to tell people about on this podcast?
Well, yes, if you are going to end up with old devices that no longer connect, please do not chuck them in the bin. We have a program called Remobile. You can take your old devices plus the charging cables and the plugs and the earbuds and everything you've got, take it into one of the mobile network stores, Vodafone, One New Zealand, Spark, or 2 Degrees. We've got recycling depots at Noel Leeming and Harvey Norman and the Warehouse. Resine paints have recycling capability as well. And then what we do is we can manage all the nasty chemicals and the heavy elements that are inside your phones and make sure they don't end up in a tip or in a dump somewhere. Just the batteries alone need to be recycled carefully. Lithium batteries can burst into flames if they're under too much pressure. That kind of thing's something we'd like to avoid. So please don't chuck them in the bin. Drop them off at a recycling centre. I know you've all got a drawer full of old phones somewhere. They can all go. I've got one sitting right here. I've got about 3 or 4 old phones. They've all got to go.
So a safety question on that for you then. A lot of those older batteries, if the phone's been sitting for a while, some people are like, I should just charge it, check to see if it works, and the batteries start to expand. What's your advice for people when that's happening?
When they're swelling, I would, if there is a risk of fire, then you want to deal with that very cautiously. So stick it outside somewhere away from anything combustible. Lithium fires are not like normal fires that we're used to, where you cut off the oxygen and usually by spraying foam or water on them, and it puts the fire out. These are chemical fires. So they will keep burning as long as there is a fuel source, and in this case, it's lithium. And they can cause quite a lot of chaos. This is why you can't carry backup batteries in your checked luggage on a plane. They've got to be in the cabin, presumably so they can do something about them. I don't know what. Open the door and chuck them out, maybe, if they. I don't know. I must find out what you do with them. But yeah, be very cautious. If it is swollen, I would. What would I do? I would probably think about ringing the local fire station asking for some help. I haven't seen any kind of guidance on the correct approach, but that's the kind of thing we're going to see a lot more of. These lithium fires. You see them with electric scooters in accidents. They catch fire and they just don't stop. Car batteries as well. The EV vehicles, electric vehicles, they're a problem too. But yeah. If you do have older phones, make sure you've wiped all the data. Take the SIM cards out if they've got a SIM card. Take them along and pop them in the recycling.
Do we think as the shutdown progresses, there will be announcements from the other telcos, like what One NZ have done, where they offer a satellite texting service to combat this? Especially,
they are all talking about. Yeah, exactly. They're all talking about deals with satellite providers. 2 Degrees has just announced one, not with Starlink, but with AST, which is a different consortium. Low Earth orbit satellites have huge potential, but they are not the perfect technology for all things. Those of you who watch the cricket on Sky will remember rain fade. Whenever it rains, your signal just drops out. There are a lot of issues like that. Connecting to your local cell phone tower is a lot shorter. It's tens or hundreds of meters. versus a satellite, which is 800 kilometers up in the sky. So there are benefits to having a terrestrial network, but it's great to have that extra layer of resilience that having satellites provide.
Any last comments from anyone?
No, I'm all good. I've learned heaps today. I'm very
Oh,
impressed.
Oh, good. Well, look, I'd love to come back at the end of the year or early next year after the Christmas break, and you can ask me how it's all gone. And the answer should be you didn't notice anything. Life just carried on. Everybody was okay. There will be no public inquiry into why we dropped the ball. Yeah, hopefully by that stage, you're so tired of hearing about me talking about 3G. But oh, yeah, of course, yeah, we were there first. So that's good.
With that, thanks, Paul, and we'll keep in touch with you throughout the year.